Good morning, everyone. Whether you're here in the sanctuary or watching from home, we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. I'm Mel Wilkinson, your worship associate this morning, serving alongside our favorite Reverend Ian Riddell. Before we begin, please take a moment to silence as much as you can the beeps, tweaks, twerps, and your doing so is greatly appreciated by everyone. Each week we acknowledge that we are gathered here on the unceded lands of the Agua Caliente Band of the Cahuilla people. We commit to grow in our understanding and relationship with this land and with the people who inhabited it before us. Have you all taken a stroll around the gardens lately? They're gorgeous. It's my belief that the tribal elders would be proud of our nurturing love of these grounds. In this congregation, we strive to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You are welcome here no matter your age, your size, if you are tall or short or rich or poor or anywhere in between. If you have a different sexual orientation or a gender identity than the person sitting next to you, when the service is over and the chalice is finally extinguished, turn around to your neighbor and say a big, firm, happy hello. We welcome people of all races, any religion you might think of, and all cultures. We also welcome all those who will learn and grow with us as we commit together to embrace the rich and beautiful diversity of the world. Our goal here is to build a community centered in justice, in compassion, and in love. Thank you, Rod. So join us for a chat after the service. As you probably figured out, there's more to this congregation than simply the Sunday morning service. We have coffee. There's more information about us on the website, about the programming that takes place for your viewing pleasure. It has the calendar and the minister's schedule and the monthly meeting of all the committees. Look us up at uucod.org or email Pam at admin, that's ADMIN, at admin.uucod.org, or to sign up for our weekly update and monthly newsletter. Phew. Take a deep breath with me and slowly exhale. As our Reverend Ian rings the Tibetan bowl and Joel moves us with Johann Bach Brahms.
Welcome again to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert on this beautiful February day where it feels like the weather has turned and the heat is coming. I am the Reverend Ian Riddell, and I have the honor and joy of serving this congregation as its minister. We gather today with the words of my colleague, the Reverend Sharon Wiley. It is said that ministers are here to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I say we are all afflicted and we are all comfortable. May our time together this morning be a comfort and a confrontation. May we here find peace in times of tumult. May we here invite tumult into lives of peace. May we here find calm in times of restlessness and allow restlessness to evolve into action. Let this be the place you consider what you've never considered. Let it be the place you imagine for yourself something new and unthinkable. May this hour bring dreams of new ways of being in the world. Come, let us worship together. My friends, will you rise in body or in spirit and join as we sing together our opening hymn, The Morning Hangs a Signal. This one's a little less familiar, I think, so Joel is going to play it all the way through for us. Please rise in body or spirit.
If you'll join me in the chalice lighting today, may love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. And I've asked Deb this morning to light our biopot candles. The biopot candles that we light are a symbol of this community's commitment to the spirit of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Please join me. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey together toward spiritual wholeness. Thank you. May we, as a community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our values so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. Picture it. Ottawa, Canada, 2004. Jane and I are invited by my father to accompany him to Montreal for the Gay and Lesbian Association Festival of the Voices. My dad, as a straight man, sang in the gay man's chorus, then known as the Caballeros. And if we went with him to Montreal, because marriage was legal in Canada, we could get married while we were there. So we always say that my father proposed for us. It was quite a surprise to learn that marriage was allowed in certain provinces of Canada in 2004, but not all of them. So we flew into Montreal, where the gala was being held, And we rented a car and proceeded to drive through a blistering rainstorm that should have been a portent for 2.5 hours to Ottawa, the nearest province where we could get married. We arrived safely and rushed to the registrar's office. Some of you who are of the heterosexual persuasion, the following conversation is probably among the normal things that you would say every day, and no one would run screaming from the room. But for us of those who are of the homosexual persuasion, in 2004, the marriage between two men or two women was shocking, earth-shattering change and a huge increase in the very existence of human existence. So when the clerk asked us how we could be helped, and we said, we'd like to get a marriage license, and they said, okay. Jane and I proceeded to hurry back to the bed and breakfast where we had parked my father and managed to get dressed in appropriate clothing that one wears when one marries the person they are madly in love with. I must say we both looked really good. We were sliding into our shoes when the proprietors announced that the minister had arrived. We were then introduced to our Unitarian Universalist community minister, the Reverend Evelyn Richter. Wow, we thought they do some really cool things here in Canada. A community minister, wow. We had to shrug, not really knowing the difference between a community minister and a regular minister, but it was a lovely ceremony, and we count this day among our favorites. Fast forward to years later when the Reverend Ken McLean of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert wrote a letter to the editor of the Desert Sun newspaper. I remember Jane reading his words that claimed inclusiveness and belonging. Since we obviously had such a positive experience with the UU community minister who married us, we decided to come to a service real soon. So that Sunday, we got to the church on time, and the rest is history. How do I describe my church to other people? I don't. I haven't found the elevator speech to truly explain the mission of our church. I say things like, my belief in that of our UU church is one of love. I tell some people that I belong to a church. Most of the time, I don't mention it. I'm sometimes asked what religion I follow or what church I go to. I always tell them the Unitarian Universalist Church. Sometimes the conversation gets so far as to go, what? And then I repeat that we believe in love. Bless you. Yes, they say, but what do you believe in? I then attempt to explain we have no deity, no one God whose word we follow. We experience love everywhere, and that there is no one book that explains love or how it should be followed or how it should be felt. We have written source of beliefs, numbers that we can refer to when we follow our love practices, but we follow no deity. I'm never sure if what I express gets through to anyone. Some have come because of what I say, some have left, but be that as it may, we express love here. Thank you.
We express love in many ways here, many, many ways. We care for each other. We care for this space. We care for our grounds, and we care for the institution, the community that we are building together, this beloved community. And now I'd like to invite Jim Brown to come up for our final pledge drive testimonial. I can't speak today. Testimonial of the year. Thank you, Jim.
Good morning. My name is Jim Brown. My wife is Karen Eisbrands Brown, and we're from northern Wisconsin. And I've been asked to come up here and say a few words of why we commit to this church. And Mel, maybe this could be your elevator speech, who knows? We'll see how it works out. Anyway, we vacationed out here for many years, and when we retired in 2010, we thought we'd come out for a little bit longer period of time and see how we liked it out here. And then after a few years of renting, we decided, well, this is what we want to make our winter home out here. So we bought a condominium, and we are in Palm Springs now, and we spend about 5 months here every year. And then after we got settled in the community, we thought that we'd like to expand our social network, maybe establish more connections, and see if we could find some community that had like values and shared the same beliefs that we have. So what we did is we started going and investigating some churches. And to be quite honest with you, our initial tries at some churches was a little bit disappointing. We just didn't find any connection for us. And then even though Karen and I are we don't belong to a Unitarian church at home, there actually isn't one, but we were married in the Unitarian church in Madison, Wisconsin. So we thought, well, maybe we should investigate the Unitarian church. And from the minute we walked onto the patio, we felt welcomed. We felt like people were interested in us. We felt people wanted us to belong. And it was just such a different experience. And then the more we attended the church and the more comfortable we came, we formally joined the church in 2020. So why did we join the church? Why do we volunteer? Why do we feel good about making an annual contribution to the church? And this is just, and there's many, many reasons, but I'm just going to go over a few of them. And one of them that's so obvious here is the spirit of volunteering. The whole vibrancy of this church is based on volunteers. The audio, visual, the grounds, the coffee afterwards, I could go on and on and on, but there's just a spirit of volunteering which to us is important, and we feel good about that. And then inclusiveness. We feel like we were included, and we feel everyone else is included honestly and without any prejudice, and we like that. We just wanted to be a part of that. Social justice, we believe in social justice. This church in so many ways lends a hand to those less fortunate than us, and we like to be part of that. Generosity. We have speakers that come here and talk about the different organizations in the community, and then we share the plate with them. We have food on the first, we have socks on the second. We have the food distribution at the Galilee Center, and all of those ways we show our generosity and we show our willingness to help those less fortunate than us. Common values and beliefs and political views. I'm just going to tell you just one very short story. In 2020, when the pandemic was going on and the auction was online, and it was right just a day or few after the election of 2020. And I don't know, I'll say there was maybe 60 people online. And somebody just blurted out that the state of Nevada had just gone for Joe Biden, and everybody on the Zoom started clapping and cheering. And what we thought about that is, it's so nice to be in an organization where people feel comfortable saying what they believe without being any fear of criticism. And that's just one example that spoke to us. Fun events, like the bake-off that we've had, the soup. There's another one coming up here. Cheesecake, if you decide to pledge. And then another one, of course, is Reverend Ian. His sense of humor, he's unassuming. He includes us all in the words and the messages that he has. His messages are thought-provoking and makes us think about our own lives and how we're committing to things. And also his voice. We love his voice. And then the last thing, and I just have to say this, we keep coming back because we want to get some more of Jerry's soup. Then I think I would just, in conclusion here, say that this church has become more than a home away from home for us. This is our home now. I mean, we don't physically live here 6 months or 12 months a year, but this has become our home. So, if you feel about this church as Karen and I do, and you haven't made your pledge, I would strongly encourage you to make that commitment now. And if you have made your pledge already, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We share, as I said, we share and give in so many ways in this community. We share of our time and our hearts. We share of our ears. We listen to each other. We welcome each other's stories. We welcome the realities and the challenges of each other's lives. And so we take a special moment now to pause at this time in our service to honor our companion in the faith, Joyce Osterhaus, who died this past week after a short time in the hospital. Joyce became a member of this congregation in 2016, though she has not been able to join us in person for several years. She stayed connected by watching our services online and sharing time with members who visited her regularly. She had a deep commitment to our Unitarian Universalist faith, and she shared her love of it with me often. We hold all those who knew and loved her in our hearts as they grieve and navigate this time of loss, especially her family and her closest friends. We will celebrate her life more fully at a service on April 15th, and we'll share more details of that as the day comes closer. We will no longer hear the sound of her voice or her laughter, see the care in her eyes, or feel the touch of her hands. And yet we know her spirit and her joy and her fierceness and her kindness live on in those she touched on her life's journey. So from this chalice of memory and hope and community, we light a candle to symbolize how her influence will go on shining in us. In mystery we are born, in mystery we die, live, and in mystery we die. Let us pause now in quiet in reflection, holding Joyce, her family, and all of our other joys and cares in our hearts as we rest here in the love of this place. May all beings know peace. May all beings know an end to suffering. May all beings know love. Friends, will you join your loving voices together as we sing Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor?
Blowing the wind, rise in the
In the chaos of the world, friends, your singing voices are a balm to my spirit. Now, I'm going to say a word to you, and I want you to sit with it in your mind for a few moments. Think about what your initial response to this word is, this idea. Just contemplate that, and I'm going to encourage you to just sit with it. Here's the word: evangelism. Just sit with that. Some of you will laugh. What is your reaction to that word? At least 4 or 5 times a week, Mark and I walk our dogs in Wilson Park at the corner of Duval and Frank Sinatra in Rancho Mirage. It's a lovely little park with trees and grass and rose bushes and lots of things for the dogs to sniff and try to eat. And over the past few years, we've gotten to recognize many other dog companions who bring their beasties to the park. And we certainly know many of the other dogs by name, more of the dogs by name than the people, of course. And they know us. Most morning also, though, there's a group of people there who aren't walking their dogs, usually in a group of 3, fairly well dressed. They are sitting in chairs they brought with them next to a stand with magazines, with pictures of smiling people, and headlines about family and peace and safety and salvation. These folks are very, very friendly. They are Seventh-day Adventists, I believe, and they're there to spread their good news to the wider public. They are not pushy or aggressive, and honestly, I've never heard them talking about their faith at all. They do enjoy their time in the park, though. And I think they respond when people ask them questions or look closely at their literature. For these folks and other Christians in other denominations, evangelism, spreading the good word, evangelism comes from good word, is an important part of their faith tradition. They believe they are saving souls, though there is a great deal of evidence that the practice of sending out younger or newer members of a tradition to evangelize is more effective in cementing group adhesion than it is in bringing in new members, but still they do this. They speak out and talk about their values. Perhaps this is the kind of thing that popped into your mind when I asked you to ponder evangelism a moment ago, or young men in ties knocking on your door, or Hare Krishnas at the airport, or the voices of passionate or angry preachers on television or the radio. One street corner I walked by regularly in downtown Chicago was home to a man who shouted hellfire-laced abuse into a microphone for hours during morning and evening rush hours. Maybe that's the sort of thing that came to your mind when I said the word evangelism a little while ago. Now, I'm betting you don't often think about Unitarian Universalism when you think about evangelism. So think to yourself for another moment, why? Why do you think we Unitarian Universalists don't, or shouldn't, or won't evangelize? Think for a moment. Would you call out why you think we don't, or shouldn't, or won't? Anyone? We have no creed. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of everybody.
It's offensive.
It's offensive.
We don't want to push our values on others.
We don't like to push our values on others.
I'm lazy.
I'm lazy. Thank you for your honesty. Sorry? There's more than one road.
I assumed that you did evangelize.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so there's more than one road. It's not classy, it's rude, some of us feel. We don't think everyone should or believe alike or think alike. It's a little loud and in our face. We don't need to, we think, or maybe we think we're better than that. But here's the thing. If we do have what we believe to be a saving message, a message of love and acceptance, of justice and inclusion and transformation, why would we want to keep it to ourselves? The book Salted with Fire, Unitarian Universalist Strategies for Sharing Faith and Growing Congregations, which was published way back in 1994 by Skinner House Books, is a collection of essays and articles by Unitarian Universalists talking and thinking about us becoming more evangelical. In an article entitled "Shout It Out, Folks," Reverend John C. Morgan claims evangelism as his and as our historic heritage. He talks about the evangelical work of his Universalist forebears, of our Universalist forebears. It's part of our history, he says, and I'm quoting him now, "I am not willing to keep quiet. I am an evangelist. It's in my family blood. It's in our spiritual blood. And without it, our movement suffers a great loss of power and passion. I believe that spiritual communities grow by evangelism as fire grows by burning. If you light a match and then don't give it air, it will burn out." Many of the articles in Alexander's book are focused on the work of spreading the word of our saving faith in order to grow our congregations and our movement, to invite us to transform our attitudes to growth and change. And those are admirable goals we should really pay attention to. And in these days, when we are faced with growing fascism and deadly attacks on marginalized communities and on the democratic foundations of our society, congregational growth cannot be our only reason for evangelism, for sharing our faith with others, for living out our values. Morgan, in his essay, defines evangelism as sharing our dream with others in order to transform the world. In a chapter entitled "Answering the Religious Right with the Big Heart of Universalism," Scott Alexander, who is also the editor of the book, writes, "We must unashamedly stand up in this culture and without arrogance or vitriol, give voice to our theological beliefs and spiritual perspectives just like our optimistic and unashamed Universalist forebears did. We must be the brave and forthright messengers of their larger hope for the whole of the human family. We must not sit back complacently," he continues, "in that self-satisfied smugness that is so common in right-thinking religious liberals, and let their centuries-old vision for a better, kinder world die because of our sophisticated cowardice or neglect." Those are his words. We must speak and live and share the generous heart of universalism. We must be evangelists, willing to speak up for the kind and generous truth that is universalism. We've been talking about that universalism here this month with our service a couple of weeks ago on our universalist theologies throughout the history of this country, and even with our blessing of the animal companions who we know to be our partners in this life and worthy of our protection and our love. Our ancestors, Alexander said, simply refused to give up on people. They saw the oneness and worth of humanity more than our separateness and sin. I want to share a little piece of evangelism I was able to engage in once that I hope had an impact. It also brought me a little smile. When I served our congregation in Las Vegas, the school district there was engaged in reimagining its sex ed curriculum. And I was involved with other clergy and community leaders in some focus groups and meetings about this. They had chosen a very progressive set of resources to base their work on, some of the same resources that our denomination and the United Church of Christ had used in developing our whole lives sex ed curriculums. Now, you wouldn't think that Las Vegas, of all places, would react badly to progressive education in areas of sex and sexuality, but you would be wrong. There was loud and angry protest of what the school board was doing. All the rhetoric we continue to hear these days about grooming and inappropriateness and exclusion and disgust heaped on non-hetero, non-cisgender lives. I attended one school board meeting where people were speaking in support of or challenging to the board's direction with its new curriculum. And despite the fact that our denomination does not ask our clergy to wear a clergy collar, those little white tabs, I often choose to wear one for public events because I want to be identified there as clergy. I want people to know that there are religious traditions and religious leaders that embrace a wider and a deeper love. I got there early and sat down on one side of the room, and as the meeting got closer and the room filled up, I began to be surrounded in my seat by a lot of people who all seemed to be middle-aged folks in conservative white shirts and dark pants or skirts. The other side of the room was filling up with the diversity of folks you would imagine would be in support of more progressive policies and practices, younger, scruffier, more colorful, more diverse. Now, the people around me were polite and saw me and showed me some deference. And they were very, very happy, and I will say self-satisfied, when I, in my collar, got up to speak. And then I opened my mouth. And I started talking about inclusion and the beauty of trans and queer lives and the imperative to educate and love and accept the diversity of our youth and to let them know that they were loved and embraced. And I talked about the dangerous and deadly impact of restrictive and abstinence-based sex ed curricula. I think the school board heard and appreciated that there were people of faith in support of their progressive leanings. I strove to be a forthright messenger, as Scott Alexander wrote, of the larger hope for the whole of the human family, including our queer and trans and otherwise youth. Now, imagine the reception I received when I returned to my seat. Staring and side-eye, people turned away from me with a huff, shock, and dismay. It made me smile a little bit, I will admit. There's just a little part of my heart that was like, oh, good, okay. I don't like to be mean, but there was a moment. So this week, as I was getting ready for today, I looked back over the past few months, and I know that I've been talking a lot since the election about the fact that we need to know in our hearts, in our bones, what it is we believe, individually and collectively, know who is included in the love that we center in our lives and our tradition, know what those beliefs and centerings call us to do and be in the world. We need to know these things because we are being called to act and do and to work in defense of our neighbors and our institutions and our freedoms in the face of an onslaught of chaos and cruelty. And it's not that hard to get pushed off our center. In versions by Derek Lin and Ken Liu, the Tao Te Ching reminds us that those who do not lose their base endure, and that holding to your place, your centering, is how you endure. So I wonder, how have you talked about your faith, if that's the word you use for it, your beliefs, your ethical convictions? Have you avoided hard conversations? Have you ended up in screaming matches? Have you found yourself silenced by uncertainty or fear or anger? All of those things have happened to me in the last months, and I know that my work has needed me to be really clear what my center is, where my grounding is, so that when the time comes, I can talk with my neighbors, talk with my senator and my member of Congress. I can be clear with law enforcement what my rights are and the rights of my neighbors are, so I can make decisions about how I choose to put my safety on the line in resistance, or how I choose to spend my money to support organizations that do that work. I really smiled when Joel chose his music for this Sunday, because the piece he played for the offertory, Make Them Hear You, comes from the musical Ragtime, and some of the words are, make them hear you, go out and tell your stories, teach your daughters and your sons, make them hear you. Make them hear you. Your sword, it's a fight. Your sword may be the sermon or the power of a pen. Make them hear you. Make them hear you is the refrain of that song. Thank you, Joel. And it makes me think about the ways that Timothy Snyder, the author, invites us to resist the growth of fascism in our world. In his book on tyranny, he shared 20 ways that we can choose to resist. Choose small and large actions that help us and our society resist the creep of authoritarian, tyrannical governance. One of these ways is to take responsibility for the face of the world. Snyder writes, the symbols of today enable the reality of tomorrow. He calls us to pay attention to our environment, to the words we're hearing, to the symbols we're seeing, and refuse to look away. Notice. If we see a swastika or other signs of hate, we should remove them or challenge them, he says. If we hear words of hate or complicity, we should call them out, counter them with our words of justice and resistance and love. In the grocery store, at church, in our homes, over the dinner table, in our offices, he says we have to decide how much risk we are willing to take and then act in ways that protect the face of the world we want to live in. He also advocates in another of his steps that we make eye contact and small talk. I know that so many of us are feeling shell-shocked and overwhelmed by the speed and force and sheer cruelty of what has been happening in our nation over the past months. Snyder wants us to push through that, to remember that we are and want to be responsible members of our communities, our neighborhoods, and our families. For Snyder, this helps us learn who we can trust in our spheres. But for me, it also helps to build stronger, more connected, more supportive communities, neighborhoods, and families. It's harder to divide people who make a practice of talking to each other. It's easier for people to hear us, easy for us to hear others if we are in the regular practice of just chatting with each other. Our next-door neighbors take what should be a short walk each evening, once around the circular road that connects our community. Now, if you were to just walk that route, it would take you about 20 minutes, depending on how quickly you walk. They take at least an hour and a half each evening because they stop and talk to everyone they see. Make connections, pet the dogs. The dogs are really why they stop, but they do stop. Check in with neighbors. These are the neighbors that I turn to when I want to know what's going on in our community, because they know so many more people than I do. It's not just gossip and trite goings-on, though. They know who is in hospital and whose mother just passed away and who is thinking of not coming back to the valley after this coming summer. And so, we can't just share our faith loudly at protests and rallies and school board meetings, though we must do that, continue to do that. Those of you who showed up on Monday at the event at City Hall, thank you. Let us keep doing those things as we hear about them. We need to be able to talk about it with our neighbors and our friends and our family, not because we want to convert them to become members of this congregation, though that would be great, but because we want to share as widely as possible our vision for a connected, inclusive, loving world so that they see that possibility, and that can happen if we keep our mouths shut. I want you to try a little exercise with me. Have faith. I want you to think on your own for a moment. If your neighbor or your niece or the person sitting beside you on the bus asked you what is this church, what this congregation was all about, if they gave you the huh, as Mel suggested earlier, how we see a just and loving world, what would you say to them? How would you describe who we are and what we do in a way that was intriguing and honest? And if you've not been a Unitarian Universalist, if this is your first time here, how would you share the values that are so deep in your heart that you want to see the world shift? Think for a few moments on your own. Now for the harder part. I want you to turn to a neighbor and share what you might say. If you're being shared with, try to listen with an open, curious mind, and then let the other person or people share. You can share in a pair or a larger group, but make sure that everyone who wants to can share. Now, two things. If you really, really don't want to share, and I'm going to encourage you to push through that worry. If you really don't want to share, I'll invite you to just tell your neighbor that you're not up for that today. And that is just fine. I don't want to force anyone into a really uncomfortable place. If you want to share and someone responds that they're not up for it, thank them and find someone else to share with. And the second thing, don't worry about perfection. This is practice in what I hope is a safe space. Use it as an opportunity to try something out. All will be well. Now, this is going to be a little chaotic, I know, and that's okay. I'll call us back together by singing. Those of you watching online, perhaps you could find someone in your house and talk to them, or your cat or your dog. So, are you ready? So you can start sharing now. I'll sing when I want to pull us back together have at it, friends. And if you don't want to, you can let people know that. Make sure everyone gets a chance to talk. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. So I know that coffee hour is going to be lively today because not everyone got a chance to share everything, I'm betting. So, friends, thank you for diving into that with great gusto. The noise you were making was a glorious thing to my heart. Scott Alexander wrote, "We must unashamedly stand up in this culture and without arrogance or vitriol, give voice to our theological beliefs and spiritual perspectives, just like our optimistic and unashamed Unitarian and Universalist forebears did. We must be the brave and forthright messengers of their larger hope for the whole of the human family. May we be inspired by our deepest convictions to be brave and forthright messengers of the love and justice and hope that moves through our hearts and through our lives, and may we always share our faith with kindness and with conviction. May it be so, friends." Will you rise in body or in spirit and sing together our closing hymn, "The Fire of Commitment"? From the light of days remember, burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire
So y'all know what I'm going to say? It's a yard sale. 1 week from today, not a day before, not an hour before, we will begin accepting donations at 9 a.m. on Sunday. So from 9 to 4 on Sunday, all the way through Thursday to at noon, donations are good. Afternoon, no more donations. If you have paper bags, plastic bags, wrapping paper like newspapers, bring them along with your donations. We also need hangers and large boxes. Don't bring them to the donation room, also known as the community room. Thank you for all your hard work. The sale has been a huge success because of your help. Mark your calendars and come to the wonderful yard sales Friday and Saturday, March 7 and 8, 9 to 4. And there's the big board sale out in the lobby for all of your large purchases. Dave Emerson and the Sacred Grounds are pleased to announce that through 3 new reinforced pathways that lead to each of the 3 benches we put in the habitats. They are accessible to folks who use assistive technology to make their way through the world. Way to go, Sacred Grounds, for leading by example. Cheryl Eaton is looking for poets to read your work on March 16th at 11:30 for our open mic poetry reading. Please contact Cheryl. And from Tracy Flynn, for all of our able bodies, we would appreciate if you could park on the street for a little while so that our latecomers and new arrivals can have the parking lot. The street is full, yes. Good steps. Also, we are in need of greeters. It's a wonderful way to meet your constituents. That was a wrong word, wasn't it? Congregationals. Please refer to the yellow insert, your order of worship for the or the pledge drive ending and conclusion with cheesecake and all of its fixings. Next Sunday is Food on the First. Please bring non-perishable items for Galilee Center. And today after the service is its new member classes will be held at 11:30 this morning. And I hope that's all. This morning. It's 11 a.m. It is. We will extinguish the chalice. Read along with me, please. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
At the end of her poem, Praise Song for This Day, spoken at the 2009 inauguration of Barack Obama, poet Elizabeth Alexander spoke these words. Praise song for struggle, praise song for the day. Praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring it out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself. Others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national, love that casts a widening pool of light, love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, this winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun, on the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for moving forward in that light. As we return to the wider world today, may we carry that love in our hearts and continue to share its light with our family and our friends, our neighbors, and everyone that we meet, knowing that we share a kind and generous and passionate truth and a larger hope for all of humanity. Go in peace, my friends, to love and serve the world.
Thank you.